In the global dating market, in terms of desirability, it's white men at the top, it's black men number 2, it's Hispanic men number 3, and Asian men number 4. In terms of desirability, in terms of all the data and stats that they're collecting, in terms of marriages, in terms of sex, access to sex, and the dating app data, black men are second, Asian men are last. Asian women don't want Asian men in mass. On the flip side, depending on the depending on the data, number 1 is either Asian women or white women, depending on the study. And then number 3 is Hispanic women. And then last is black women.
I'm Chris Grandison. Welcome to Xenogenesis, where I use evolutionary psychology to discuss black community issues. And in this video, I'm going to discuss that question you just saw posed by Jeff St. James of the Ask a Brother podcast. Now, let's get right into what Jeff St. James said. Now, he asked, what causes black women to be at the bottom of the totem pole of desirability? Now, at its core, this is primarily a question of sexual selection, which is the process of how sexual romantic preferences that we have shape how men and women select some people as mates, and then they'll reject others. Basically, it boils down to be preferred as a mate by the opposite sex, one must have the qualities people desire in a mate. So if black women are at the bottom because of anti-blackness and white supremacist cultural beliefs about black people, shouldn't black men be at the bottom of these, desirability rankings as well? Well, there are a few mitigating factors that, even though anti-blackness is on black men and it pushes them down and makes people see us as a threat and aggressive and stuff, there's some things that push us up. Now, one of these issues is that black people are perceived as being more masculine compared to other races. And take note of my wording there. I didn't say black men are seen as more masculine, I said black people. So I'm also talking about black boys, black girls, and black women. They are also perceived as being more masculinized than the other races. And the blacker we look, the more black African we look, the more masculine blacks are perceived to be. So the more aggressive we're perceived to be, the bigger we're perceived to be, the more African we look. Now, in several different contexts, this masculinized view of black people, it harms us, whether one is male or female. It harms black men, for example, let's say, in the labor market. If you're perceiving black men as large and aggressive, you're going to be less likely to want to hire that guy. And of course, we all know in our interactions with cops, they are quick to put hands on a black man because of that feeling of threat. And there's some other things going on there as well, but that's good enough right there. They're feeling more threatened, that we're more aggressive, so they're going to be more likely for excessive use of force on black men and black women too. It harms black kids because it causes other races to perceive them as older than they really are, which leads to them being more harshly disciplined because they're expecting more mature behavior out of them. So if you perceive, let's say, a black kid who's really 9, but you're perceiving them as 12 or 13, well, you're going to expect more mature behavior. And when you don't see it, then in schools they're going to be disciplined for poor behavior because they're expecting more mature behavior out of them. Now, it harms black women in several contexts, and one of them is going to be in interracial dating. Now, the gender differences in our evolved sexual psychology play a role in why black men are not at the bottom of the sexual rankings as black women are. Black men have some desired traits associated with strong physical masculinity, just like we just heard in those studies. So they're seen as larger and more physically aggressive. But strong physical masculinity goes along with having, let's say, good musculature, height, and a deep voice. So those right there, in terms of body attractiveness, they are very strong attractive traits that women find very attractive in men cross-culturally. Now, in the study I discussed earlier from Colin Holbrook about the black sounding names, it caused perceptions of large, aggressive, black men.
So let's be clear what you're looking at here, that black skin is an indicator of being lower in status and rank. Now, this has all kinds of follow-on consequences. You let lower status people speak to you. How do you speak to them? You know, how do you treat them? What do you think they deserve? So this is also from that study where size on white men was perceived positively, but size on Black men was perceived as threatening. So stereotypes of Black men as dangerous are deeply entrenched, and the participants of the study couldn't change that in their minds. To them, dangerous equals big, and big equals dangerous with regard to Black men.
So being physically large and behaviorally aggressive are both qualities associated with strong masculinity. So in other words, they're telling you they perceive Black men as having more strong physical masculinity. Now, to those reports from Colin Holbrook's study, we can add another study done in 2010, and I'm going to give you the name of that as well so you can read this for yourself. Now, this was titled Self-Protective Biases in Group Categorization. Threat cues shape the psychological boundary between us and them. Now, the participants in this experiment were asked to categorize voice recordings with a low or high degree of masculinity. So we're talking about, that deep bass in your voice for that strong, masculine sound. Now, they found that white participants of this experiment were more likely to categorize the more masculine voices as Black male voices. So for all those three traits now, they're just white people are perceiving Black people, Black men, as being more strongly physically masculine than other men. Now, and as I said, it causes a lot of problems, but when it comes to the mating market now, it can enhance a Black male's attractiveness. But what those and other studies are empirical evidence of is that Black men are perceived as being more masculine than other men, and in many social contexts, strong masculinity will be perceived as threatening. But in the mating market, a lot of women find strong masculinity attractive. Now, not all women find strong masculinity attractive, but for the ones that do, they may find Black men quite attractive. So this can be the mitigating factor that lifts Black men off the bottom of the desirability rankings. Blacks being perceived as more masculine operates in a totally opposite fashion for Black women. Black females being perceived as more masculine compared to white, Latino, and Asian women places them at a sexual selective disadvantage in the interracial mating game because men are, attracted to femininity in women. They stereotype Black women as loud and aggressive and angry compared to other women. And all of those behaviors, being aggressive and, angry and stuff, these are behaviors more strongly associated with men and masculinity. So given that data regarding what is negatively associated with being Black and being more masculine, it's pretty clear how and why both place Black women at a sexual selective disadvantage in competition with white and Asian women for desirable men. And it locates them at the bottom of that global desirability rankings that Jeff St. James was talking about. So, but I'm going to stop that one here. Any questions you got, place them in the comments. And if you want me to analyze something else from an evolutionary psychological perspective, put that request in the comment section and you'll see it analyzed in a future video.